When it comes to the markets this week, a surprise in the stocks report earlier this week pressured the corn market, and traders are now starting to eye some key support levels. Soybeans, meanwhile, continue to feel harvest pressure, and wheat fell to fresh lows despite limited issues in the Southern Hemisphere. To help make sense of all of this, we welcome this week on the show market analyst Jeff Petersen. All right, we've got harvest underway. Perhaps we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but let's talk about some of the news of the week. USDA report issued earlier in the week. We've got the stocks report. In particular, corn was an interesting number because of how far off the trade was compared to what USDA had published. What's going on there?
Yeah, as we dig into those numbers, you think about it, it's getting harder and harder, I think, as we get more storage out there, both at the farm level and also at the commercial level, to get a good survey on that. Also, everybody's so busy from the farming side and everything. Sometimes those estimates or the surveys come out and it's hard to get them filled out in a timely fashion. So I think we got a little bit of sampling on that maybe we weren't quite getting the responses that we'd seen. But you're exactly right. It was a surprise. As you look in and dig in the numbers, came in about 207 million more bushels than what we was expecting to see. We were, if you look at the ending stock number and what the estimate was for the 2024 corn crop, at about 1.325 billion is where it was coming out of September, and then to come in at 1.532 billion. And so that's a big increase. But as we dig deeper, I think a lot of it is important to look at is behind the numbers. So what they did tell us, NASS did tell us, is that production will come up 25 million bushels. And as you look at that 25 million bushel increase, they didn't change the yield at all, so they made some minor adjustments on the acres. What that does imply, though, is 182 million bushels less on the demand side. And so what that's going to mean as we dig in, so that 182 million, usually when we see an adjustment like that coming out of quarterly stocks, that comes right back over and works on the feed and residual number. Mm-hmm. And so that probably brings us down to where feed and residual will end up being about 5.5 billion instead of, you're down about 182 million from where it was. Now, beans were also off, if you take a look at beans, but nothing like what we saw in corn. Bean stocks actually were lower, 14 million. But what was interesting on them, though, is they did raise production 8 million. So in this particular case, what that means is that implies a 22 million bushel additional demand number. So overall, as we go into and roll into the October report, if there is an October report, we're going to end up having to see stocks increase on the corn side, and then also we'll have to see them decrease on the soybean side.
Of course, the reason why you hit that there wouldn't be another report in October is because we're in this government shutdown period as it stands as you and I record this conversation today. Back on the impact of that report, December corn as it traded through the Wednesday session, trading lower at a resistance level, I think, of 414 for December. What happens if we fall below that number? Where might the corn market be heading?
Yeah, so I think if you dig in and you look at the charts and some important levels there, the 407 level is a very important level that we need to be above that. And then if we would break through the 407 level, then you open yourself up to 403. If you'd break down below the 403, then I think the target becomes 392. Now, I don't think we'll get down to the 392. We have to keep in mind that the funds are currently short, and we are below the 100 and 200-day moving averages. So they do want to continue to sell this market in here, but they want to be cautious, though, because there is a lot of uncertainty yet on what the actual yield is going to be. A lot of variability in the yield. You've got a situation of really, it's the two corn belts. The western corn belt overall is okay on moisture and was good on moisture, but it had problems with the southern rust. And so depending on whether you treated or you didn't treat, depends on where your yield's going to come in compared to last year. Then you switch over to the eastern corn belt, and eastern corn belt was just, in parts of it, in the southern part of Illinois, it was wet early, then flipped dry, has been dry overall, and just really kind of had a really hard finish to that crop. And so you bring all that together, I think there's some adjustments that's going to have to be made yet on the corn yield. And those adjustments will have to be a lower yield going forward.
All right, how about on the soybean side of things? We continue to see that market be under pressure. Harvest is progressing, getting some early results. Is that what's pressuring the market at this point? Or I guess we also start talking South America this time of the year, don't we?
Yeah, I really think you've got three items as we dig in and take a look at the soybeans. I think the overhanging cloud over everything is the fact that we don't have any sales on the books going to China. We know we've got some very good sales on the books. It's not that there isn't sales, but if you really think about it, this time of year, right during harvest in October, November, we should be running close to 85 to 90 million, maybe even a chance of 100 million bushels that we're sending out, every week here for a few weeks. And I think if you look back to 2018 and 2019, which was kind of the last time we were in a trade war with China, what you'd be looking at there is that we'd probably be somewhere in the 55, 60 million bushels, maybe 50 million bushels. So I think the trade's going to be a little disappointed in what we're getting sent out the door from the export inspection side. Then you have to look over at the yield side, and overall, it's a west versus east thing again. In the Western Corn Belt, we really have got some very good yields that are hearing on the soybean side. I think in many cases you could be looking at 5 to 10 bushels better than last year, depending on the area, depending on how much not southern rust, but sudden death. Then you go over in the Eastern Corn Belt, and you've got areas in the Eastern Corn Belt, as we mentioned on the corn side, they physically haven't had a rain through August into September, so they didn't get a real good finish on that. And then as you come back around and look at the soybean side, then you have to look at the demand side. We talked about it from the export side, but you also have to look from the crush side. Crush is going to be good, but that won't be enough to overcome what we won't end up seeing there go out the door on the export side.
Now, of course, the president did announce a deal with China. That was on TikTok, though, not soybeans, much to the demise of the American farmer as that news came out. Well, you laid out all these factors, Jeff. Here we are in the midst of harvest season. What are we going to do with the extra corn and soybeans we have on the books?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And, so right now what you want to do is you really want to go through and look at, what do I have for acres? What do I have for yield? What do I have for storage? What about those bushels that are going to town? If you're taking those bushels to town and haven't locked up your basis yet, and they'll have to be sold at harvest, I'd encourage you on the bean size to get that done. If you're taking them in and you don't plan on selling them, what I would look at doing is I'd look at putting them on the delayed pricing side. I think we'll have a chance to get some bounce on the futures price. I also think once we get through harvest and have a chance at physically getting China in the market, we can have a chance to have some improvement on the basis side. But you're going to have to be able to ride through a lower market here on the futures price and also on the basis side. Then over on the corn side, I think on corn, I think you've got a window in here yet. If you haven't locked in basis, you're going to need to sell at harvest. You've got a little bit of time to do that yet. But have your basis set on that before everybody switches over to corn. But I would do the same thing on the corn side. With these extra stocks that we've got now, that's caused us probably not to quite get the amount of bounce that I thought we could get on the corn side, but I still think we'll get some recovery post-harvest.